Hey there, it's me Eden. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to my channel and visit my Patreon page for early access, link in the description.
That had happened. She had said it. She had told someone. And the world hadn't ended. She swallowed hard, pressing a hand against her chest. Ava had seen her. Not completely. Not in the way she wanted everyone to. But it was a start. And for now, that was enough. Martha stood in the empty hallway for a long time after Ava left, her heart still pounding, her hands still trembling slightly at her sides. She had said it. She had actually said it. I actually go by Martha now. It had come out so quietly, barely more than a breath. But Ava had heard it, had acknowledged it, had accepted it. And Martha hadn't expected that. She had spent so much time thinking about this moment, what it would be like when someone outside of Brenda or Michelle finally knew. She had imagined every possible reaction. Confusion, disbelief, judgment. She had braced herself for something more. More questions, more hesitation, more doubt. But Ava had just smiled. Cool. That was it. That was all. No disbelief. No skepticism. Just acceptance. Martha swallowed, pressing her fingers against the cool metal of the lockers. Her legs felt unsteady, like the weight of everything was finally catching up to her. She exhaled slowly, closing her eyes for a moment. This was real. This was really happening. She had told someone. And she was still here. She wasn't dreaming. She wasn't pretending. She was Martha. And now someone else knew it too. She let out a slow, shaky breath, then pushed off the lockers and forced herself to move. One step at a time. Back to class. Back to the world. Back to whatever came next. She barely paid attention for the rest of the period. Her mind was spinning. Every few minutes, her fingers twitched against her notebook, the words replaying in her head like a song she couldn't turn off. See you later, Martha. That was the first time someone at school had said her name. Her real name. She almost wanted to write it down, just to see it again. To prove to herself that it had happened. Her hand hovered over the page. And then, slowly, carefully, she wrote it. Martha. Just that. Just her name. She stared at it for a long time, her breath shallow, her heart hammering. It looked right. It felt right. More than Martin ever had. More than anything ever had. She traced the letters with her fingertip, letting herself sit with the feeling. This was real. She wasn't going back. Not now. Not ever. The final bell rang, shaking her from her thoughts. Students flooded into the hallways, laughing, shoving books into their bags, making plans for the afternoon. Martha slipped into the current, weaving through the crowd, her body moving on autopilot. She barely noticed where she was going until she heard someone call her name. Her old name. Martin. She flinched. She turned, heart sinking, and saw Jake, one of Ryan's friends. He was jogging up to her, grinning, completely unaware that the name had felt like a slap across the face. Dude, Ryan's trying to get a group together for the game this weekend. You in? Martha's pulse roared. Jake was so casual. Like nothing was different. Like she wasn't different. Like she was still Martin. Her chest tightened. This was the part no one told you about. The part where you finally figured out who you were, but the world hadn't caught up yet. The part where you had to hear a name that wasn't yours, over and over, and pretend it didn't hurt. She swallowed hard. She didn't know what to say. She wanted to correct him. She wanted to tell him, that's not my name. But she wasn't ready. Not here. Not yet. So she forced a tight smile and shook her head. I think I'll pass. Jake shrugged. All right. Let me know if you change your mind. Then he was gone, disappearing back into the crowd. Martha stood there, frozen, her heart pounding. She wasn't angry at Jake. He didn't know. He had no reason to. But God, she hated hearing that name. She took a slow breath, clenching her jaw. This was going to keep happening, wasn't it? Over and over and over. Until she told them. Until she corrected them. Until she took the next step. Her stomach twisted. She wasn't ready for that yet. But she would be. One day. And when that day came, she wasn't going to let the world ignore her anymore. She was Martha. And eventually, everyone would know it. Martha walked home with her hands stuffed deep in her pockets, her steps slower than usual. The day had drained her. Not physically, her body felt fine, if a little stiff from sitting in class all day. But mentally, she was exhausted. Too many thoughts. Too many almost moments. She had told Ava. That had been huge. But then there was Jake, calling her Martin like nothing had changed. And maybe, to him, nothing had changed. He hadn't seen her yet. Neither had Ryan. Neither had most of the school. Neither had her mom. The world was still looking at her through the wrong filter. And that filter was still Martin. She swallowed hard, keeping her gaze on the pavement as she walked. Brenda was beside her, humming a song under her breath, not rushing, not pushing, just being there. Martha appreciated that. Brenda let her have her silence when she needed it. But she also wasn't stupid. You're thinking too hard again, Brenda finally said. Martha sighed. I can't not think about it. Brenda smirked. Sounds fake, but okay. Martha rolled her eyes. Brenda. What happened? Brenda cut in, her tone shifting from teasing to something softer. Martha hesitated. Then I told Ava. Brenda nearly tripped. Wait, what? Martha nodded, still staring at the sidewalk. She called me Martin and I corrected her. I told her I go by Martha now. Brenda grabbed her arm, stopping them both in the middle of the sidewalk. Martha. That's huge. Martha swallowed. I know. And? Brenda pressed. What did she say? Martha finally met her sister's eyes. She just said cool. Brenda's lips parted. Oh! Martha let out a breathy laugh. Yeah. Brenda blinked. Damn. That's actually kind of perfect. Martha shrugged. I guess. Brenda grinned. You were expecting something way bigger, weren't you? Martha hesitated. Then, reluctantly maybe. Brenda laughed, throwing an arm around her shoulder. Welcome to the real world, babe. Sometimes people just accept you and move on. Martha exhaled. That's good though. Right? Brenda nodded. Oh, totally. It just means she already kinda knew. Martha frowned. What do you mean? Brenda smirked. Come on. People notice things, even if they don't realize it. You've been changing, babe. Maybe she saw it before you did. Martha's stomach flipped. Could that be true? Had Ava already seen something? Before Martha even said anything? The thought made her feel both lighter and terrified. Brenda nudged her. Either way, she knows now. And she took it like a champ. Martha nodded slowly. Yeah, she did. Brenda squeezed her shoulder before letting go, continuing down the sidewalk. All right, so what's the real reason you're brooding? Because I know there's more. Martha sighed, catching up. Jake called me Martin today. Brenda winced. Oof. That sucks. Martha nodded. And I didn't correct him. Brenda was quiet for a second. Then, that's okay. Martha glanced at her. Is it? Brenda nodded firmly. Yeah. You don't have to be ready all at once. It's not a race, babe. Martha bit her lip. But what if I never feel ready? Brenda scoffed. You will. You already are. Look at you, telling Ava like it was no big deal. A week ago, you probably would have passed out just thinking about that. Martha huffed out a small laugh. Fair point. Brenda grinned. See? You're doing fine. One step at a time, remember. Martha inhaled deeply, then nodded. One step at a time. And today? She had taken another. By the time Martha got home, her head felt like it was buzzing. Too many thoughts. Too many emotions crammed into one day. She had told Ava. That had been huge. But then Jake had called her Martin. And she hadn't corrected him. That moment had settled in her chest like a weight she couldn't shake. Even though she knew she wasn't ready to tell everyone. Even though she knew that one step at a time was enough. It still hurt. Because she had heard it. That name. A name that didn't belong to her anymore, if it ever had. And she had let it happen. She sighed, kicking off her shoes as she stepped inside. The house was quiet. Her mother wasn't home yet. Brenda wandered toward the kitchen, casually grabbing a snack from the fridge. You want to talk about it more, or do you need, introvert recovery time? Martha let out a soft huff of laughter. A little of both, I think. Brenda smirked. Fair. I'll give you space, but you better tell Michelle. She's gonna freak when she finds out about Ava. Martha swallowed. Yeah, I will. She wasn't sure why she was hesitating. Michelle was going to be so excited. But maybe that was why. Because once she told Michelle, it became even more real. Not just something that happened in a quiet hallway, not just a single moment between her and Ava. It became a step. Another step forward. And each step meant she was further from going back. She inhaled slowly, then nodded. I'll tell her. Brenda grinned. Good. Now go do whatever weird processing thing you need to do. Martha rolled her eyes, but a smile tugged at her lips. She headed upstairs, shutting the door behind her, finally alone with her thoughts. Her room was still, quiet, the only sound the soft ticking of her bedside clock. She set her backpack down and sat on the bed, pulling out her phone. Her fingers hovered over Michelle's name. Then, before she could second-guess herself, she started typing. Martha, so. I kinda told someone today. A few seconds later, the typing bubble appeared. Michelle, wait. What? Who? Martha exhaled, then sent another message. Martha, Ava. A pause. Then, Michelle, Ava Kelly? Martha smiled. Martha, yeah. Michelle, what did she say? Martha, she just said, cool. Another pause. Then, Michelle, OMG. Martha's stomach flipped. Michelle, that is so much cooler than any big dramatic reaction. That's like casual cool girl energy? Martha let out a breathy laugh. Martha, yeah. It kinda was. Michelle, I told you people would just accept you. Martha swallowed. Martha, not everyone. Michelle, wait. What happened? Martha hesitated. Then, Martha, Jake called me Martin today. And I didn't correct him. The typing bubble appeared, then stopped. Then started again. Then stopped. Finally. Michelle, that's okay. Martha blinked. She hadn't expected that. Michelle, you don't have to do everything at once, babe. You're already doing so much. Martha swallowed, her fingers tightening around her phone. Martha, but what if I never feel ready? Michelle's reply came almost instantly. Michelle, you will. And until then, you have us. Me. Brenda. And now, apparently, Ava freaking Kelly. Martha exhaled, closing her eyes for a second. She wasn't alone. She wasn't alone. She typed back. Martha, thank you. Michelle, always. Martha smiled softly, staring at the screen. Today had been big. Maybe not in the way she had expected, but in a way that mattered. And tomorrow? She'd take another step. Because she could. Martha sat cross-legged on her bed, her phone still in her hands, the glow from the screen casting soft light onto her fingers. Michelle's words lingered in her mind. You don't have to do everything at once. You're already doing so much. She let out a slow breath, setting her phone aside. Her room was quiet. Too quiet. Normally, she liked the silence. It gave her space to think. But tonight, her thoughts were loud. Because today had happened. And it had changed everything. She had taken a real step forward. She had said her name out loud to someone new. And Ava had just accepted it. It should have been a relief. It was a relief. But it also made the gap between who she was and who everyone still thought she was feel even bigger. She knew she had to tell more people eventually. She wanted to. But the idea of saying those words again, of hearing Martin slip out of people's mouths over and over, of correcting them, of not correcting them, it felt huge. Like standing at the edge of something massive and knowing she had to jump. She ran her fingers over her wrist, feeling the slight texture of the pink hairband she always wore. She had made so many small changes already. Painting her nails, buying clothes that actually felt right. And now, she had said her name. She was doing this. Slowly, step by step. And still, it wasn't enough. She squeezed her eyes shut, frustration bubbling up inside her. When will it be enough? When will I stop feeling stuck? A soft knock at the door startled her. Martha. Brenda's voice. Martha swallowed. Yeah? Brenda poked her head in, raising an eyebrow. You okay? You're, way too quiet. Martha sighed. I'm just thinking. Brenda snorted. Again? Babe, you gotta stop that. Martha rolled her eyes. Haha. Brenda stepped inside, flopping onto the bed dramatically. Okay, Spill. What's up? Martha hesitated. Then, I don't know. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. I feel like I'm stuck in the middle of something, and I don't know how to move forward. Brenda tilted her head. You're moving forward. Martha frowned. But it doesn't feel like it. Brenda studied her for a moment. Let me guess. You thought telling Ava was gonna magically make everything click into place. Martha huffed. Not magically. Brenda smirked. Babe. Martha groaned. Fine. Maybe a little bit. Brenda grinned. Called it. Martha exhaled, leaning back against her pillows. I just wanted it to mean something. Brenda nudged her leg. It does mean something. Just because it wasn't some huge dramatic moment doesn't mean it wasn't real. Martha swallowed. Then why do I still feel like I'm waiting for something? Brenda was quiet for a moment. Then, because you're still scared. Martha stiffened. Brenda gave her a knowing look. You're waiting for the right time to tell people. Waiting for the right moment. But babe, there's never gonna be a perfect moment. Martha's breath hitched. Because deep down, she knew that was true. Brenda stretched, yawning. You already took a huge step today. Give yourself a second to breathe, will you? Martha bit her lip. I just don't want to feel invisible forever. Brenda softened. You won't. Martha inhaled shakily. How do you know? Brenda smirked. Because you're Martha. And there's no way the world could ignore you forever. Martha let out a small, shaky laugh. That was so cheesy. Brenda grinned. Yeah, well, I have my moments. Martha smiled, feeling the tension in her chest ease just slightly. She wasn't where she wanted to be yet. But she wasn't alone. And for now, that had to be enough. Martha woke up the next morning with a strange mix of emotions sitting heavy in her chest. The sun was barely up, golden light spilling through the blinds, cutting across her ceiling in soft lines. She lay still for a moment, staring at them. Yesterday had happened. She had told Ava. She had said her name. And the world hadn't ended. But it hadn't changed either. She still had to go to school today. Still had to walk through the halls, hear people call her Martin, pretend it didn't sting. Still had to exist in a space where no one really saw her yet. She swallowed hard, staring up at the ceiling. How long would it be like this? How long would she have to wait for people to catch up? Her fingers found the pink hairband on her wrist, twisting it absently. She didn't want to be invisible anymore. She couldn't be invisible anymore. She exhaled slowly, sitting up in bed. A small part of her was tempted to backtrack, to wear one of her old hoodies, something baggy, something safe. Maybe if she didn't push forward so quickly, she wouldn't feel so stuck. But that wasn't true. She wasn't stuck because she had taken steps forward. She was stuck because she was afraid to take more. She chewed on her lip, then got up, crossing the room to her dresser. Her fingers hovered over the clothes for a moment. Then, slowly, she picked out a soft cardigan, the kind she had always wanted to wear but never let herself before. She pulled it on, letting the sleeves drape over her wrists. She grabbed a pair of jeans, the ones that fit just right. Then, she hesitated. Her gaze flicked to her desk, to the small container of lip gloss sitting next to her books. She had been careful with it before. Just a thin layer, subtle, barely noticeable. But today, she grabbed it, uncapped it, and swiped on a second coat. It was still small, still quiet, but it was hers. She pressed her lips together, feeling the smooth texture settle in place. Then she turned to the mirror. And there she was. Not Martin, not a version of herself that had been forced on her. Just Martha. She swallowed hard, her chest tightening. She was doing this. She was really doing this. And today, she was going to do just a little more. Brenda was already at the kitchen table when Martha walked downstairs, scrolling through her phone, lazily eating a bowl of cereal. She glanced up, spoon halfway to her mouth, and immediately smirked.
Oh,
She's stepping it up. Martha rolled her eyes, grabbing a piece of toast from the counter. Shut up. Brenda grinned. No. I love this for you. The lip gloss is glossier today, the outfit is softer. Babe, you're practically glowing. Martha groaned. Why are you like this? Brenda popped another spoonful of cereal into her mouth. I'm your #1 hype girl. Deal with it. Martha huffed, but couldn't help the small smile tugging at her lips. Brenda tilted her head. You nervous? Martha hesitated. A little. Brenda nodded, like she had expected that. Good. That means it's real. Martha chewed her toast slowly. What if today is just like yesterday? What if no one notices? Brenda leaned forward, resting her chin in her hand. Then you try again tomorrow. Martha swallowed. And if they do notice? Brenda smirked. Then you deal with it like the badass you are. Martha exhaled, steadying herself. Right. One step at a time. Brenda nudged her arm. You ready? Martha inhaled. Then nodded. Yeah. Brenda grinned. Let's go, babe. And just like that, the day had begun. Another step. Another chance. And Martha was taking it. The walk to school felt different today. The air was crisp, the kind of morning that wasn't quite cold, but made you want to tuck your hands into your sleeves. Martha did exactly that, gripping the fabric of her cardigan, feeling its softness against her fingers. It wasn't a big change. Nothing dramatic. But it was another step forward. The cardigan, the jeans, the extra layer of lip gloss, small things. Things no one else might even notice. But she noticed. She felt it. And that was enough. She glanced at Brenda, who was walking beside her, humming something under her breath, completely unfazed by the morning silence. Martha took a breath. What if today is harder than yesterday? Brenda smirked. Then we deal with it. Martha sighed. I love how you say that like it's so easy. Brenda shrugged. I mean, it's not easy. But you're doing it anyway. So it doesn't really matter how hard it is. Martha rolled her eyes. That is the worst pep talk I have ever heard. Brenda laughed. Yeah, well, it's true. And besides, what's the worst that could happen? Martha hesitated. That was the problem. She didn't know. And somehow, that was scarier than anything else. They reached the school entrance, and Martha felt her heart speed up. She wasn't afraid, exactly. But she was waiting. For something. For someone to say something. To notice. She followed Brenda through the halls, her shoulders tight, her pulse thrumming in her ears. Nothing. Students moved around her, talking, laughing, shoving books into lockers. No one stared. No one pointed. No one pulled her aside and asked why she looked different. It was just another school morning. Just like yesterday. Her stomach twisted. Was this good? Was this bad? She wasn't sure. Brenda gave her a quick side-eye. Babe, breathe. Martha exhaled sharply. I am breathing. Brenda smirked. Barely. Martha shook her head, biting back a nervous laugh. She reached her locker, fiddling with the combination lock, trying to ignore the tightness in her chest. She had hoped for something today. Some kind of reaction. Some kind of proof that the world was catching up to her. Instead, she was still waiting. The locker door swung open, and she reached inside, grabbing her books. Then, hey, Martha. Her breath stopped. She turned, her heart slamming against her ribs. Ava. Standing there casually, leaning against the lockers like this was normal. Like it was nothing. Like she hadn't just called her Martha in the middle of the crowded hallway. Martha swallowed. Hey. Ava nodded at her. You good? Martha blinked. Yeah. Ava smirked slightly. Cool. See you in class. Then she walked away. Martha stood there, frozen. Her mind was reeling. Because that had just happened. Ava had called her Martha. Casually. Like it wasn't a big deal. Like it was already her name. Brenda nudged her. Babe. Pick your jaw up off the floor. Martha swallowed, her hands tightening around her books. Did you? Oh, I heard, Brenda said, grinning. Miss, too cool for everything, just casually name-dropped you. That was a moment. Martha exhaled, her pulse still racing. I can't believe she just. Believe it, Brenda said, leaning in. She sees you, babe. You're not invisible. Martha swallowed hard. Brenda was right. She wasn't invisible. Not anymore. She was Martha. And at least one person at school knew it now. Her chest tightened, but this time, it wasn't fear. It was relief. She had hoped for something today. And she had gotten it. One step forward. One more step toward who she was meant to be. Martha barely made it through her first few classes. Her body was physically there. She sat in her usual seat, took out her books, pretended to listen when the teachers talked, but her mind? Her mind was still in that hallway. Still replaying Ava's voice. Hey, Martha. So casual. So normal. She had just said it, like it wasn't some massive thing, like it wasn't the first time someone outside of Brenda or Michelle had called her that in public. Like it was already her name. Martha twirled her pen between her fingers, barely registering the notes she was supposed to be taking. This meant something. It had to. Ava wouldn't have used that name in the middle of the hallway if she didn't get it, right? Had she thought about it after yesterday? Had she realized something? Martha's pulse sped up. She wasn't sure if that thought thrilled her or terrified her. What if Ava asked more questions? What if she didn't? Would it feel worse if she just let it go? If today was the only day it ever happened? Martha pressed her lips together, still feeling the soft layer of gloss she had applied this morning. No, this wasn't going to be a one-time thing. Because she wasn't a one-time thing. She wasn't just trying this name on like a costume. She was Martha. Every day. And if Ava had figured that out, if she had already accepted it, then maybe, just maybe, the rest of the world could too.
Please subscribe my channel for the next part. And visit my Patreon page for early access.